disruptive.
America that I fought for.
Weird thing to happen. So get this. This is an interesting take. This is from Case Study, and they highlighted this video from CNN just recently. This is from July the 8th. And it says Representative Adam Smith says the quiet part out loud on how the elites and Democratic establishment didn't want Bernie Sanders in 2020 and picked Joe Biden. So the reason this is coming to highlight is the fact that right now, it seems like a lot of the establishment, after witnessing many train wrecks of Joe Biden, is possibly reconsidering taking Joe Biden off the ballot and putting in another person to fill the role of the Democratic nominee. Now, Joe Biden is retaliating against the establishment, saying that he is capable and they're attacking me. But now it seems like the cat's out of the bag. They're finally realizing that, oh, well, the establishment got Joe Biden to where he is right now. So this is the fascinating part where, as we're mentioning about election integrity and interference, I always highlight about this. Because people always talk about, the 2020 general election, but I like to refer to the primary as the best example of how the Democratic establishment alone rigs its own primary to hand select its own constituents to high rise against the most popular candidates. We saw that with Bernie Sanders. We saw that in 2016, the same thing happened with Bernie Sanders. That even though he got the most votes, he got the most delegates, he got the most standing in all the different states got represented, they picked their candidate that best represents the establishment, and they go against the populace. They go against the popular vote. And the fact that Bernie Sanders not even mentioning about this is it's mind-boggling. Like, this is well known. Elizabeth Warren has stated about this. Donna Brazile, who used to work in the DNC, wrote this in her book. It's very well documented. And now they're finally revealing that game out in the open on CNN. Saying this to Biden, like, don't mess with the establishment because they gave you the job.
I got to make one other point.
Yeah.
So the president talked today about how now it's all the elites who are trying to force him out.
Right.
Let's remember what happened in 2020. Okay, the president did not run a great primary campaign. He lost badly in Iowa, New Hampshire, and Nevada. He came out of Nevada, and Bernie Sanders looked like the presumptive nominee. And this exact same group of people,
the elites,
that the president is now deriding as elites. And by the way, they're not. They're Democrats, okay? They're party operatives, they're donors, they're volunteers, decided
that are elites. That is the term, that's the generalized term that used to describe them. It doesn't matter if what side of the ballot they are elites. It's the elite class. It's the handful of individuals that are part of this coalition to go against the majority of the country. That's the elite class. Those are the people that are turning the rules upside down and having the super delegates, having their own, PACs issued to hand select their individual, even though it goes against the entire party and the people that voted for them. That's the elite class. It doesn't matter if they're lobbyists or CEOs. They're part of that class.
And to all the Bernie supporters out there, I'm not judging this positively or negatively. They decided they didn't want Bernie Sanders to be the nominee. They decided that Joe Biden would be the better nominee. And credit, again, to the president. He decided that because he did 8 years as vice president. He did the years in the Senate. He had the record to be a strong president. And so they, through their support behind Joe Biden, and Pete Buttigieg and Elizabeth Warren and Mike Bloomberg and Amy Klobuchar, and I may be forgetting a few others, stepped aside for the candidate who was better. This myth that somehow Joe Biden came in and rescued us, it has been a nationwide movement since Donald Trump was elected president. And in 2020, that nationwide movement said, Joe, you're the best guy, let's go. Right now, they don't think he is.
No, what happened was they saw Bernie Sanders Bernie Sanders is getting a lot of movement. And to famously quote what Chris Matthews said drunkly in the 2020, it was a 2020 or maybe it was 2016. No, I think it was 2020. What he said at a drunk bar at the Iowa caucus, he's not going to be president. There's a lot of problems. People are excited about him. They can't have that in the establishment. They need a puppet. They need someone that could smile and do their agenda willingly. And that's why they picked the worst to be the top tier. That's why they picked someone like Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, this chaotic duo that clearly is not anywhere close to having merit of being any sort of leader whatsoever. But they handpicked these people because they are the ones that are pushing the agenda of the elites, of the establishment, of the Democratic donors. That is why Joe Biden became president. A guy who barely polled 8% in the entire primary. Everything went towards Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren. They were the top two candidates. But somehow, Joe Biden, who was dead last, and everybody knew about it, including the candidates that were running, knew about this. They all stepped aside and allowed Joe Biden to move forward to the point where Bernie Sanders, and again, this could be the fact that they have blackmail on him, Bernie Sanders cowered down to the Democratic establishment. And that is why we have a demented walking corpse as president. And the fact that the establishment now has come forward to say that Biden is not good enough for us and is casting him aside, and Biden's retaliating is frankly interesting. Because now it just seems like there's a kind of donor class civil war happening in the fact that now they're scrambling the fact that people are clearly seeing that Joe Biden is not capable of running the country. He's not capable of his own bodily functions. So who's really running the show? And who are the people really angry at? Because they knew from the start Joe Biden is clearly not mentally well. He's not mentally capable of any of this. So who brought him to the top? Who made him the president? It certainly definitely wasn't the people. It was the intelligence agencies. It was the donor class. It was Democratic operatives. It was people that were tampering, possibly with the general, but definitely with the primary. That's what this all reveals. And it's just amazing that now we're seeing this kind of internal butting heads of the donor class that got Joe Biden to the top and Joe Biden retaliating against the people that got him to the top in the first place. Because they knew that Joe Biden is unpopular from the start. They knew that from the start. So how he became the nominee and how they lied to us saying that it was the people's choice, no. It was because they were screwed by the party that's been screwing people from day one. And how they pulled and possibly blackmailed all these different candidates like Pete Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar, Michael Bloomberg, Elizabeth Warren, and even the fact that Kamala Harris, back in the primary days, Kamala Harris called out Joe Biden for being racist. Even though she would be accused of being racist, she called out Joe Biden for being a racist, for instituting the 1994 crime bill, for segregating people, and for busing. Kamala Harris called him out. Now all of a sudden she's the vice president and defending him. It's way more of a higher power that has deep control over everything than people understand. It's not just a simple, used car salesman fly corruption. There's a deep, dark entity that really has override everything. That your democracy is not taken away by January 6th. It wasn't, rednecks in get-up gear storming the Capitol that took away democracy, because democracy hasn't existed in America since probably at least the 60s. About the time when the establishment, the intelligence agencies, all crowded together, and the corporatocracy all crowded together and took over the nation. As the mid-70s movie The Network taught us, that there are no nations, there is no democracy. It's just a few corporations controlling everything and a handful of dollars traded internationally. That's how everything operates. That's how you get Joe Biden. That's how you get demented, freakazoid, sane, psychopathic Joe Biden that even at his peak moment of mental acuity, even at the peak moment when he did have a functioning brain, was the most sinister and evil, because he was doing it on behest of the donor class. So it's amazing that all of a sudden now CNN's able to be just upfront and open and say, hey, they didn't want Bernie Sanders, so you guys stuck it up with this. And here's also this to reassure this. Another guy later on, this is Chuck Rocha, points out the irony of Biden chastising the Democratic elites that helped him to get the nomination in 2020. Listen to this.
Also say something that that's very, I wouldn't say it's funny, I would say this very interesting, is the same elites that he talks about in my party were the same elites in 2016 in the presidential primary that said everybody had to come together behind him to beat Bernie Sanders when they demanded everybody drop out so that he could be the only person to beat Donald Trump. So I think it's ironic that he's telling people now, those same people that said we have to be with Joe Biden, that they could challenge him at the convention. Also say something that's very.
So the reason why this happened is because they were less worried about Donald Trump becoming president, but worried about Bernie Sanders being president, which ironically was also something that Donnie Deutsch done on MSNBC. They're more terrified of having a person that represents people than a game show host. They rather have Donald Trump than someone like Bernie Sanders. That goes to show you the democracy value in America and how it's really an operative control by the oligarchy, and you have no choice. You have no opinions. They bought you out and sold you out and thrown you under the bus like a bunch of peasants, like slaves, like lab rats stuck in a container. And they're just using you to manipulate and misjudge you and throw you under to these agendas as much as possible. They just don't care.